collected a few stories, we divide them into domains of change. And then when we've got the domains in place, we establish an ongoing collection of stories, develop a structure to select them, work out how we're actually going to review them, and there's different techniques of voting or like various score techniques, and then how we're going to do the feedback back to the communities, back to the funders. You can actually do verification of stories, especially the ones that are selected, like where Rick did MSc. They had thousands of MSc stories, and just 4 would be selected. So those stories, people went back to those communities, found out what happened since, and also collected some more information on them, turned them into case studies. So there's a verification step. And there's a secondary analysis step. You can, of course, look across all hunt, like if you, Aussie Tinata say they collected 40 stories, you could at some stage look at all 40 stories and make some judgments about that. It's actually not a key part of MSc to do that. You need analytical skills to do that. But it's a great thing to do if you have got somebody on board with those skills. And finally, you've got to learn the lessons, use them to improve your program. You know, it's really part of that. It's definitely a learning tool. The fundamental steps, though, are just 4 to 7. Collecting the stories, selecting them, and feeding it back. And the rest is sort of like the more full approach, if you like. Yeah. So what I was going to say. Yeah, this is a last slide that I like. I was talking about it before. The key distinction between MSc and other techniques, I think, is that most evaluation techniques, and even OM, I think, in this case, is about saying, what are we trying to achieve? What's our vision? Who are we trying to work with? What would be good? What would we like to see? Now, has it happened? What are we trying to see? Has it happened? You're standing in the project and thinking of it from the project point of view. So MSc is like, let's get out of the project. Let's walk into the organisations, the boundary partners. Let's talk to our boundary partners or our beneficiaries, find out what they think from their point of view, what's the most significant change, and then you look at how the two meet. So we call it context in rather than program out. So MSc is a very pure context in approach. That's what we call it, context in. And you can do it at different degrees of purity. The most pure form, which nobody ever does, is to actually go to a community and say, you don't even mention the name of the project, what's been the most significant change in your community? And it would be very humbling to know that they will probably never mention the project. They'll talk about the drought and the farming and, you know, all the sort of things that are going on. You can use MSc as a research project in that sense, a research methodology. We normally go a little bit less context in and say, as a result of the project, what's the most significant change? Right, nearly finished. I've talked to you about that one already. Now, the key end, this is my last slide. MSc is a supplementary technique, as I've said already. It analyses individual experience. And that's it really can enrich other monitoring and evaluation processes by adding a human voice, helping us search for unexpected outcomes, providing a platform for learning and dialogue. But I find that's often the key data that shows impact, but somehow it's never enough just to show the stories. So the way we actually use MSc increasingly in my work is we put it in part of a bigger picture. And we actually use this, and this is the thing, we combine. My company, we are evaluation specialists, and we use about 10 different tools, and MSc is only one of them. And if later on you want to combine, you want to do something that we haven't talked about today, I am happy to talk to you about other methodologies. We've played around a lot with John Main's contribution analysis, and we do this thing called performance story reporting, which is telling the whole story of a program. And we use a 5-part structure and a 5-part process to do that. And we combine multiple lines of evidence to tell that story, and MSc is only one line of evidence that we use. And we use quantitative data as well. And if any of you are interested in that, it's actually really big in Australia, in the World Bank, in AusAid. Performance story reporting is far bigger, potentially more important than MSc. It may be something some of you want to learn more about. But it is a reporting framework. So it would work. You could take OM and put it in the results into a performance story report, for example. But you'd need a few more methods to sort of finish it off. Yep, that's what I was going to say. The key thing is, you know, really going back to pattern stuff. It's so important to think about What are you doing the evaluation for? What constitutes credible evidence? And then match the methodology to it. For some people, MSc will be the most credible of all because it's very authentic. There's an authentic voice in there. For others, they'll see it as anecdotal stories and they'll want data. Some will want cost-benefit analysis. So when you're thinking about who your users are, you need to think about what constitutes credible evidence. And increasingly, despite I'm quite qualitative in my orientation, but I use a lot of quantitative data. Why? Because I need both to present a credible case. And I suggest you look at that too. If I was one thing I was going to critique just using pure outcome mapping for, it would be that it doesn't seem to encourage multiple lines of data. And of course it can. It doesn't say it shouldn't do that, does it? But it doesn't suggest it or advocate it. So that's something. But the whole point is to go back to the original. What's the use of the evaluation? Okay, that's where I was going to stop. Any final questions? Yeah?
Sorry, Adam and I were discussing this here, but we were wondering how you could use this methodology in the research project. Like,
in a research project?
Yeah. It's more like
for research? Ah, yes. For evaluating research or for to evaluate a research project? Well, you'd be really evaluating the effect of your dissemination activities rather than the actual research findings. So it would be how you've disseminated it. So you go and say, what's the most significant change as a result of the research product or the research findings? So you'd use it like that. It'd be about use of research. Yeah. And you do it that way. But you can actually use MSc as a research tool, but that's a different story. I won't go into that one.
It could also be about building research capacity, right? So it
Yeah.
could be, what's been your most significant change in your capacity to conduct research? You could ask researchers that question.
It has actually been used in a research project, and I have the framework, and it is available on a website if you want to follow it up. There's a program called the Social Institutional Research Program the Australian government runs, and they do research, social research, but it's not development research. And they use MSc to track the results of the research and all the kits there. It's a very good framework, actually. I can give you the website address to give you an idea. But they collect most significant change stories. They have to allocate who they think their key users of the research will be. It can be a policy user, the key boundary partner, a policy user, or a person, if it's a product, who's going to use that product, and then they interview them every 6 months to find out how the policy might have been influenced or how the product might have been used, and they use the MSc question. In a sense, the MSc is one question that you use to try and find out where they're coming from. And often it's not what you expect, as you probably know. You find out a research, people say, the research didn't work at all like that, but it made us think about this. Or actually policy stuff, well, not exactly where we thought it was going to be used, but it got used over here. Or maybe, no, it didn't get used at all, but we've got some ideas about how if you just tweaked it like this, we could use it for this even bigger thing. So that's the sort of stories that they're about. Yeah.